This video is brought to you by America First Insight. Help support the growing conservative movement by becoming a member today. And if you want to support this channel, you can also use the code REAL when becoming a member. Thank you and enjoy the video. As everybody probably knows, the Republican Party got absolutely crushed on Tuesday, and not just in one or two states or one race or whatever. That's one thing. They got crushed across the board. In nearly every single state that had any kind of elections on Tuesday, Republicans, let's cut the crap, they shat the bed. They failed miserably. Outside of maybe Texas and a couple races in New York, it was a pathetic showing. It was a blue tsunami, not just in Democrat states, but in places like Pennsylvania, Georgia, places like New Jersey, Virginia, California, across the board. It was a blue tsunami. And because the results were so bad, people have begun to say that 2026 is going to be a historical blue wave, and Democrats, they're going to win 350 House seats. It's all over for the GOP. And let's be clear about one thing. I do believe after the results on Tuesday, the chances of Democrats having a blue wave next year, it has gone up. Let's cut the crap. It has gone way up, because this is a warning to the GOP that, hey, what you guys are doing right now, it's not working, especially to President Trump. Like, you may love him, but let's be honest here. It's clear that it's just not working. Something with what Trump is doing and saying right now, it's just not working at all. And I know we're talking about states like Virginia. I'm not saying that Republicans had to win all these races. The problem is they got crushed, even in the AG race, which everyone thought was going to be a hold for the GOP because Jay Jones was such a god-awful candidate, had a bunch of scandals. At the bare minimum, win that race, and it's like, okay, it's not as bad as it could have been. But no, he didn't just win by a half a point, which is one thing. He won by 6. It was a larger victory for Jay Jones than what Kamala Harris won Virginia just a year ago. That's the problem. The margins were pathetic in places like Virginia, in New Jersey. The races that everybody were talking about, that's where Republicans struggle the most. But here's the thing about these results. And listen, again, like I said, I think Republicans are in a very bad situation heading into next year. I'm not denying that. But I do think that some people, they are dramatically overstating the results last night for how they correlate to 2026. Do they correlate a little bit to show that, hey, Republicans have some problems? Absolutely. They have some serious issues heading into 2026 and potentially 2028 with the economy, with stuff like that. Like, the economy is the number one issue, cost of living. That's why Republicans lost. Not this nonsense that Mark Levin's pushing. It was the economy, dumbasses. That's why you lost. You got crushed because the economy, no matter what metrics you push out, no matter what you say about the inflation rates, which that might be true, people just think it sucks. Nobody can buy a house. Nobody can afford groceries. It's a shit show at this point. You cannot just keep saying we have inflation under control. That's the same crap that Biden did back in 21, 22, 23, and in 2024. And look how that went for him. It was a disaster. But okay, whatever. We talked a lot about that yesterday. The results, they were pretty bad for the GOP. Republicans, they got crushed by 13 points in New Jersey, 15 or 16 points in Virginia. It was bad. But there is a bunch of catches for what happened on Tuesday. The first thing is, these electorates were as Democrat as you can realistically get in these races. Just honestly, places like New Jersey, they voted for Harris by 5 or 6 points. On Tuesday, based on what we're seeing in the precinct results and the county results, even some of the exit polls, though exit polls can be kind of wonky, especially on Tuesday, they were really bad. But based on what we're seeing, the electorate in New Jersey was like Harris plus 13, Harris plus 12. In Virginia, Harris plus 13, Harris plus 14, plus 12. So these electorates were 7 to 8 points more Democrat than they were in 2024, which, it's expected. It's supposed to be more Democrat, in a off-year election. Yeah, that's the point. Sure. But we weren't expecting a 7, 8 point shift. And that's one problem that a lot of people are not understanding. This was basically the best case scenario for Democrats. They had a perfect storm of events. Trump is below water by like 6 or 7 points, if not 10 points at this point. The turnout was perfect because of the shutdown. It motivated Democrats like crazy. They were already very motivated, but after the shutdown, they got even more motivated to vote. And that's a big impact, especially in Virginia. With all those government workers, what do you think's going to happen? They're going to vote. Now, we didn't think to the extent they did, but they were going to vote at higher rates, just not as high as they did. Even New Jersey, which, not so much the government workers, but there's a lot of voters that are on SNAP benefits in these states. And, well, they were motivated to vote, and they voted Democrat by wide margins. That's the number one takeaway from on Tuesday. Democrats, they found their ceiling, I think, in New Jersey and Virginia. This was a perfect storm of events. The economy sucks. Trump's approval is going down. Republicans are below water. And you had a shutdown to boost Democrat turnout even more. This was a perfect storm. And this was their ceiling, in my opinion. But based on what we're seeing, that was their best case scenario. Because we're talking about Harris plus 12, Harris plus 13, a 7-point shift in the electorate. That basically never happens in the midterms. Not even in blue tsunamis like 2018. It shifted a couple points, but not by 7. So that's the first thing. This was the best case scenario for turnout. Republicans, yeah, they voted at higher rates compared to 21 or whatever, but Democrats, they broke every single record with the shutdown, with other things going on. And will they keep that up? Maybe. But this was one of those weird elections where Democrats, they had everything going for them. Will there be a shutdown next November? Democrats may try, but at that point, they may change the Senate rules. We don't know. So that's the first thing. This was the absolute best case scenario for Democrats, okay? This was best case scenario. Shit hit the fan so bad for the GOP. The electorate swung 7 points to the left, which that's not going to happen next year. Could it maybe? Sure. But historically, at least, that doesn't usually happen. When these off-year elections, they tend to happen where, yeah, there's these big shifts. But then the next year, it just doesn't occur. So that's the first thing. The second thing is Republicans, they got obliterated down ballot. Not just for these governor elections, but in Virginia, it was so bad that Republicans, they were losing seats that they thought they had a 95% chance of winning. And Democrats ended up with a supermajority in the Virginia legislature, or almost. They were like 2 or 3 seats away to a supermajority. But there is one fascinating aspect of what happened on Tuesday. Despite the fact that the electorate shifted 7 points to the left in Virginia, 7 or 6 points or whatever, it was much more Democrat than a 1-point shift. It was like a 7-point shift. You look at the turnout, that's what it was. Here's the thing. With the turnout being such a massive Democrat shift, the most Republican seat that flipped in the legislature was only R plus 3. Yeah. The most Republican seat in the Virginia legislature was not R plus 7, R plus 10. It was R plus 3. That's it. Which I know that's a big shift like that. That's not good. But that's the thing about these elections. the down ballot impact, it was bad, but really, you look at these swings, like the 41st district in Virginia, it was R plus 2.9 back in 2024. And it was the most Republican seat to go Democrat, which is weird because you would expect, especially in Virginia, with how unpopular Trump is, you would expect R plus 7 seats to go red or Democrat. But they didn't, at least down ballot. Maybe for the governor election, maybe they did. But it was like 1 or 2 extra seats they won. So really, for the down ballot races, the most Republican seat that really flipped based on the congressional results was R plus 5. Look at this. Virginia first. This is roughly an R plus 5 seat, and Spanberger won it by 3, roughly. That was the most Republican seat that she won. It wasn't R plus 12, R plus 30. The most Republican seat that flipped on Tuesday in Virginia was R plus 5. And down ballot, it was closer to R plus 3. Here's a problem with that for Dems, because you would say, oh, that's great news. That's going to win Democrats a bunch of seats next year. If you apply the same shift where they win all these seats within 3 points, they're going to win a landslide. That's what you would think. But here's the interesting thing. Look at this. These are the results from 2024 by House seat. And you may notice something. Republicans in 2024 won 210 House seats by at least 5 points. All right, Trump won these seats by at least 5. There are only 19 seats in the House next year, at least as of now. We don't know with redistricting, and with Utah, we're just assuming it's like R plus 1 or whatever. There are only 19 House seats that were within 5 points. Okay? You know what's the problem? Democrats get a majority, but if they win every single seat, all right, that is within 5 points for the House, and let's just say they win Henry Cuellar's seat and Gonzalez's seat in Texas. Okay, that's 2 extra ones. In that scenario, they would have a majority. But you're looking at best case scenario, the stars align. If you have an electorate that's as Democrat as yesterday, which again, that's very unlikely, and with it being Virginia, it might have been overstated dramatically because it is where all the government workers are. You're looking at best case scenario for Democrats. What, like 228? Yeah, it's a big shift, but considering how much they won these areas by, you kind of think that this is kind of a disappointment. Again, I'm not saying that Democrats only win 225. I'm not saying that's their ceiling, but just do the math. The results last night, yeah, on Tuesday, they were really good for the Democrats. But there are some underlying questions like, hey, is this really feasible to do this back in 2026? Because 2026, it's going to be higher turnout because it is a midterm. It's going to have higher turnout across the board. Maybe not in Virginia. That was maybe best case scenario with the shutdown. But that's a point. That's a weird thing about these races. We might have found the absolute ceiling for Democrats in 26. Basically, winning all these seats that are R plus 5 or less. And that's about it. If you're the Democrat Party, you would expect a bit more. Now, again, anything can happen the next couple of months, sure. But really, the more you look at these results, considering how Democrat this environment was, how unpopular Trump was in Virginia, it kind of was a disappointment in some areas. Now, I'm not saying it was good for the GOP. Obviously, it was a landslide that got killed everywhere. But really, they probably should have won these areas by even more. I can't believe I'm saying that. But the more you look at these results, was this just a turnout thing? Obviously, there were some Trump voters that did vote Democrat, like in New Jersey. We did see that. But it wasn't as many Trump voters as you think. It was basically like 10%, which is a good chunk. If that really, maybe close to like 5%. But people make it sound like a third of Trump voters, they bailed on Democrat Republicans down ballot and it's all over. But these same voters for years have been voting Democrat down ballot anyways. So yeah, it was a bad night for the GOP. Nobody should say it was actually a historically good night. No, it was pathetic. Republicans got killed everywhere. But really, it may not be as bad as some people are suggesting. It may not be this historical D plus 30 blue wave next year. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But really, these results don't scream it's going to be the biggest landslide ever, because this is best case scenario. This really seems like this was best case scenario in New Jersey and Virginia. You apply the same shifts across the board with this electorate. Really, it may not be enough. But anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.